In the gleaming towers of Silicon Valley, where innovation was currency and ideas transformed into billion-dollar empires overnight, a single signature on a patent document would soon shake the foundations of Technova Industries. What began as an ordinary Tuesday morning in their state-of-the-art research facility would end with revelations that would redefine everything the company thought it knew about power, ownership, and justice. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The headquarters of Technova Industries stood as a monument to technological achievement, its glass facade reflecting the California sun like a beacon of progress. Inside, the building hummed with the energy of cutting-edge research and development. Clean white corridors connected laboratories filled with the latest equipment, where teams of engineers and scientists worked on projects that could revolutionize entire industries. The air buzzed with the electricity of innovation, punctuated by the soft hum of servers and the occasional excited discussion about breakthrough discoveries. Dr. Amelia Washington moved through these halls with quiet confidence, her heels clicking rhythmically against the polished concrete floors. At 34, she possessed a brilliant mind that had earned her a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University, followed by groundbreaking research in quantum computing applications. Her colleagues respected her intellect, though few truly understood the depth of her contributions to the company's most valuable projects. She carried herself with the poise of someone who had fought for every achievement, her dark eyes reflecting both wisdom and determination. Amelia's corner office overlooked the sprawling campus, its walls lined with whiteboards covered in complex equations and circuit diagrams. Patent certificates hung in simple frames, testament to her innovative mind, though she rarely drew attention to them. She preferred to let her work speak for itself, believing that excellence would eventually be recognized and rewarded. Her desk was organized with mathematical precision, every pen and paper in its designated place, reflecting a mind that thrived on order and logical thinking. The quantum encryption project had consumed her thoughts for the past 3 years. Late nights in the laboratory, countless iterations of code, and hundreds of failed prototypes had led to this moment, a breakthrough that could fundamentally change how sensitive data was protected across global networks. The technology she had developed could render current hacking methods obsolete, creating an unbreachable digital fortress that governments and corporations would pay billions to access. What made Amelia's achievement even more remarkable was that she had developed the core algorithms independently during her graduate studies before joining Technova. The company had hired her specifically because of her expertise in this area, though the full extent of her prior research remained her closely guarded secret. She had been careful, documenting everything, ensuring that her intellectual property was properly protected long before corporate lawyers became involved. 3 floors above Amelia's laboratory, Bradley Hoffman commanded the research division from his executive suite. At 52, Bradley embodied the old guard of Silicon Valley leadership, a man who had climbed the corporate ladder through strategic maneuvering rather than technical brilliance. His corner office was decorated with awards and photographs of him shaking hands with industry titans, each image carefully positioned to project authority and success. Bradley's background was in business administration rather than engineering, a fact that sometimes created tension with the brilliant minds he supervised. He had joined Technova 15 years earlier when the company was smaller and less diverse, rising through the ranks by aligning himself with the right executives and making decisions that prioritize short-term profits over long-term innovation. His management style was authoritarian, demanding absolute loyalty while showing little patience for employees who challenged his methods or questioned his decisions. Despite his lack of technical expertise, Bradley had developed an uncanny ability to identify valuable projects and claim credit for their success. He surrounded himself with a carefully selected team of managers who shared his worldview and supported his leadership without question. The research division under his control had become increasingly homogeneous, with diversity initiatives consistently deprioritized in favor of what he called proven talent acquisition strategies. The relationship between Amelia and Bradley had been professional but strained from the beginning. Her obvious competence threatened his authority, while her quiet confidence made him uncomfortable in ways he couldn't quite articulate. He had initially tried to micromanage her work, inserting himself into technical discussions where his contributions added little value. When that approach failed to diminish her influence, he began excluding her from important meetings and decision-making processes, hoping to limit her visibility within the organization. Bradley's assistant, Jennifer Mills, had noticed the pattern of exclusion but felt powerless to address it directly. Jennifer respected Amelia's work and had witnessed firsthand the value of her contributions to the company's most important projects. However, speaking out against Bradley's management decisions would jeopardize her own position, leaving her to observe the growing tension with increasing concern. The corporate culture at Teknova reflected the broader challenges facing the technology industry. While the company publicly championed diversity and inclusion, the reality within its walls told a different story. Executive leadership remained predominantly white and male, with women and minorities often finding themselves marginalized despite their qualifications and contributions. The unspoken rules of advancement favored those who fit a particular mold, while others struggled to gain recognition for their achievements. This environment had shaped Amelia's approach to her work. She had learned to be strategic about when and how she shared her ideas, understanding that being too vocal or assertive could be perceived as threatening. Instead, she focused on producing undeniable results, believing that exceptional work would eventually overcome the barriers she faced. Her strategy had worked to some extent, earning her respect among her technical peers, but it had also made her vulnerable to those who sought to minimize her influence. The quantum encryption project represented more than just a technological breakthrough for Amelia. It was proof of her vision and capabilities. She had identified the market need, developed the theoretical framework, and led the team that brought the concept to practical application. The project had the potential to generate hundreds of millions in revenue for Teknova, establishing the company as the leader in next-generation cybersecurity solutions. What Bradley and the executive team didn't realize was that Amelia's contributions went far beyond her role as project leader. The fundamental algorithms that made the quantum encryption possible were based on research she had conducted independently, intellectual property that she had legally protected years before joining the company. The patents she held were not merely supporting technologies, they were the foundation upon which the entire system operated. As morning meetings commenced throughout the Teknova building, an undercurrent of anticipation rippled through the research division. Today would mark a significant milestone in the quantum encryption project, with final testing results expected to confirm the technology's commercial viability. For Amelia, it represented the culmination of years of dedicated work and the validation of her innovative approach. For Bradley, the successful completion of this project would solidify his reputation as a visionary leader and potentially position him for promotion to the executive committee. He had already begun planning how to present the achievement to the board of directors, carefully crafting a narrative that emphasized his strategic leadership while minimizing the contributions of individual team members. Neither of them could have anticipated that this day would set in motion a series of events that would expose the fundamental inequities within their organization and ultimately reshape the power dynamics that had defined their professional relationship. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not only their individual resolve, but also the very principles upon which Teknova Industries claimed to operate. In the laboratories below, scientists and engineers continued their work, unaware that the delicate balance of power within their organization was about to shift dramatically. The quantum encryption technology that promised to protect the world's most sensitive information would soon become the catalyst for revealing uncomfortable truths about protection, ownership, and justice within their own corporate walls. The weekly research review meeting convened in Teknova's main conference room, a space designed to intimidate as much as inspire. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Bay Area, while a massive mahogany table dominated the center of the room. Around it sat the division's key personnel, tablets and laptops at the ready, coffee cups strategically positioned for what everyone knew would be a marathon session. Amelia entered carrying a leather portfolio containing 3 years' worth of research documentation. Her presentation slides were loaded with performance metrics, security analyses, and market projections that painted an extraordinary picture of commercial potential. The quantum encryption system had exceeded every benchmark they had established, delivering processing speeds that outperformed existing technologies by orders of magnitude while maintaining absolute data integrity. Bradley positioned himself at the head of the table, his presence commanding immediate attention from the assembled team. He had spent the previous evening reviewing executive summaries prepared by his staff, though the technical details remained largely incomprehensible to him. What mattered was the bottom line. This project represented the kind of breakthrough that could define his legacy at Teknova and secure his position among the company's senior leadership. The presentation began with standard project updates from various team leaders, each reporting incremental progress on their respective initiatives. The atmosphere was professional but subdued, with managers carefully measuring their words to avoid triggering Bradley's notoriously unpredictable responses to challenges or setbacks. When Amelia's turn arrived, the energy in the room shifted perceptibly. She stood with quiet confidence, activating the wall-mounted display system with practiced efficiency. Her first slide revealed performance data that caused several attendees to lean forward in their chairs. The quantum encryption system had achieved processing benchmarks that exceeded their most optimistic projections, handling complex cryptographic operations at speeds previously thought impossible outside of theoretical mathematics. The commercial applications are extraordinary, Amelia explained, advancing to market analysis slides that detailed potential revenue streams. Financial institutions alone represent a billion-dollar opportunity, but the real breakthrough lies in government applications. National security agencies worldwide are desperately seeking unhackable communication systems. Dr. Sarah Chen, the senior cryptography specialist, nodded enthusiastically. The mathematical elegance is remarkable. We're essentially creating digital locks that become stronger every time someone attempts to break them. It's counterintuitive to traditional security models. Bradley shifted uncomfortably as technical discussions continued around the table. While he understood the business implications, the underlying science remained frustratingly opaque. His management philosophy had always relied on controlling information flow and decision-making processes, but quantum encryption involved concepts that seemed to operate beyond conventional logic. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Let's focus on practical matters, Bradley interrupted, his tone carrying subtle authority. Implementation timelines, manufacturing costs, licensing agreements. Our investors need concrete projections, not theoretical possibilities. Amelia paused, recognizing the familiar pattern of technical dismissal that had characterized their previous interactions. The theoretical foundation drives everything else, Bradley. Without understanding the underlying principles, we risk making strategic errors that could compromise the entire project. The room fell silent, tension crackling like electricity between storm clouds. Other attendees sensed the undercurrent of conflict but remained carefully neutral, unwilling to choose sides in what felt like an increasingly personal confrontation. I appreciate your dedication to scientific accuracy, Bradley replied, his voice carrying condescension that made several people uncomfortable. But business decisions require leadership experience, not academic theory. We need to streamline this technology for mass market deployment. Dr. Marcus Rivera, the materials science coordinator, cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we could explore both approaches simultaneously. The theoretical framework provides our competitive advantage, while practical implementation ensures market viability. Bradley's jaw tightened at what he perceived as implicit support for Amelia's position. The decision hierarchy here is clear. Technical teams provide input, management makes strategic choices. We can't afford to get bogged down in endless scientific debates when competitors are racing to market. Amelia felt heat rising in her chest, a familiar sensation that had accompanied countless similar encounters throughout her career. The dismissive attitude toward rigorous analysis represented everything she found frustrating about corporate culture. The elevation of authority over expertise, politics over truth. Competitors can't replicate what they don't understand, she responded firmly. Our advantage lies precisely in the theoretical sophistication that others lack. Dumbing down the technology to meet conventional expectations would eliminate the very qualities that make it revolutionary. The philosophical divide in the room became unmistakable. On one side stood those who believed in the transformative power of deep scientific understanding, viewing innovation as inherently disruptive to established patterns. On the other sat advocates for incremental progress, preferring proven methodologies over radical departures from industry norms. Bradley sensed his authority being challenged in front of subordinates, a situation he found intolerable. Innovation without implementation is worthless. Academic research belongs in universities, not commercial enterprises. Our responsibility is delivering profitable products, not winning Nobel Prizes. False dichotomy, Amelia countered, her voice steady despite mounting frustration. The most profitable innovations have always emerged from fundamental breakthroughs, not incremental improvements. Companies that fear scientific complexity get left behind by those willing to embrace it. Dr. Chen exchanged glances with several colleagues, recognizing the broader implications of this debate. The quantum encryption project had become a symbol of competing visions for Teknova's future. Would they position themselves as pioneers pushing technological boundaries, or would they retreat to the safety of conventional approaches? Bradley leaned back in his chair, studying Amelia with calculating eyes. Your perspective reflects inexperience with market realities. Customers buy solutions to problems, not demonstrations of intellectual sophistication. We need products that ordinary people can understand and use. The comment stung not merely because of its dismissiveness, but because of the underlying assumption that her viewpoint somehow lacked legitimacy. Amelia recognized the familiar pattern. Her expertise minimized, her insights questioned, her contributions relegated to secondary importance, despite their obvious value. Ordinary people don't need to understand quantum mechanics to benefit from quantum encryption, she replied, maintaining professional composure despite internal turbulence. They need unbreakable security, which is exactly what this technology provides. Oversimplification compromises functionality. The meeting had evolved beyond a technical discussion into something resembling ideological warfare. Other attendees found themselves forced to choose between supporting proven leadership or backing innovative thinking that challenged established hierarchies. The stakes involved more than project direction. They encompassed fundamental questions about how organizations should balance stability with transformation. Bradley's patience reached its limit as he perceived the discussion slipping beyond his control. This debate ends now. I'll make the strategic decisions based on business requirements, not theoretical preferences. Technical teams will implement solutions according to management directives. The pronouncement landed like a thunderclap, reverberating through the conference room with unmistakable finality. Amelia felt the weight of institutional power, asserting itself against individual expertise, a dynamic she had witnessed countless times throughout her career, but had hoped might be different at Teknova. Understanding isn't optional when dealing with quantum systems, she said quietly, her voice carrying steel beneath its measured tone. Quantum encryption either works according to physical laws, or it doesn't work at all. Management directives can't override mathematical reality. The words hung in the air like a challenge, forcing everyone present to confront uncomfortable truths about authority, expertise, and the complex relationship between them. Bradley's face flushed as he realized that his position was being questioned not just practically but philosophically. Dr. Rivera attempted diplomatic intervention. Perhaps we could schedule follow-up sessions to explore implementation strategies while preserving the theoretical integrity that makes this technology unique. But the damage was done. Lines had been drawn, positions established, and the fundamental incompatibility between competing worldviews had been exposed for all to see. The quantum encryption project had become a battlefield where scientific truth would clash with institutional power, with consequences that neither side fully anticipated. As the meeting concluded with forced politeness and carefully neutral scheduling of future discussions, both Amelia and Bradley understood that their conflict had transcended professional disagreement. They were fighting for the soul of innovation itself, and only one vision could ultimately prevail. The emergency board meeting was called for Friday afternoon, an unusual timing that sent ripples of anxiety throughout Teknova's executive floors. Bradley had spent 3 sleepless nights crafting his strategy, consulting with corporate attorneys and senior management to build an airtight case for what he euphemistically called, quote, organizational restructuring. The quantum encryption project's imminent success had become his weapon rather than Amelia's vindication. Amelia arrived at her laboratory that morning unaware of the machinations occurring 3 floors above. She was focused on finalizing the security audit results that would demonstrate the commercial viability of their quantum system. The tests had exceeded every expectation. Their encryption protocols had withstood simulated attacks from the world's most sophisticated hacking algorithms, proving virtually unbreachable under real-world conditions. The preliminary findings sat on her desk in a sealed envelope marked Confidential Board Review Only. Inside were documentation and data that would revolutionize cybersecurity across multiple industries. Government agencies had already expressed preliminary interest, with the Department of Defense indicating willingness to pay premium prices for exclusive access to the technology. At precisely 2 p.m., Jennifer Mills appeared at Amelia's laboratory door, her usual professional demeanor replaced by visible discomfort. Dr. Washington, Mr. Hoffman requests your immediate presence in conference room A. Please bring all project documentation. The formal tone struck Amelia as unusual, but she gathered her materials without question. The quantum encryption files, research notebooks, and test results were carefully organized in her briefcase. 3 years of meticulous work that represented the pinnacle of her professional achievement. Conference Room A occupied Technova's top floor, reserved for the most sensitive corporate discussions. As Amelia entered, she immediately sensed something wrong. Bradley sat at the head of an imposing table, flanked by 2 individuals she didn't recognize, a stern woman in an expensive suit, and a man with the calculating demeanor of a corporate attorney. "Dr. Washington, please sit," Bradley said, gesturing to a chair positioned directly across from him. The setup felt deliberately confrontational, designed to emphasize power dynamics rather than facilitate collaborative discussion. "I've brought the security audit results," Amelia began, placing her briefcase on the table. "The quantum encryption system has exceeded all performance benchmarks. We're ready to proceed with commercial implementation." "That's precisely what we need to discuss," Bradley replied, his tone carrying ominous undertones. "The board has reviewed this project's trajectory and identified serious concerns about its management and direction." Quote. The woman in the expensive suit leaned forward, introducing herself as Patricia Hawkins from Technova's legal department. "Dr. Washington, we've conducted a comprehensive review of the quantum encryption project, including its leadership structure and resource allocation. Our analysis reveals significant inefficiencies that require immediate correction." Amelia felt confusion beginning to morph into alarm. "I'm not sure what inefficiencies you're referring to. The project has consistently met or exceeded every milestone we established. The technology is ready for market." Bradley opened a folder containing what appeared to be performance evaluations and project assessments. "Unfortunately, your management approach has created unnecessary complications. The board believes this project requires more experienced leadership to navigate commercial deployment successfully." The words hit Amelia like a physical blow. 3 years of exceptional work, breakthrough innovations, and flawless execution were being characterized as management failures. She struggled to process the cognitive dissonance between objective reality and the narrative being constructed around her. "More experienced leadership," she repeated, her voice steady despite mounting disbelief. "I developed the foundational algorithms. I led the team that solved every technical challenge. The commercial success you're discussing exists because of the approach you're now criticizing." Patricia Hawkins consulted her own set of documents, speaking with the detached precision of someone delivering predetermined conclusions. Technical competence and management capability are distinct skill sets. The board has determined that transitioning to senior leadership will optimize this project's commercial potential. The corporate attorney, who had remained silent until now, placed a document on the table in front of Amelia. "We're prepared to offer a generous severance package in recognition of your contributions. This transition will allow you to pursue opportunities more aligned with your academic background." Academic background. The phrase stung with its implied dismissal of her practical achievements and commercial acumen. Amelia realized she was witnessing a carefully orchestrated removal designed to eliminate her from the project she had created. "You're firing me," she said quietly, the words carrying a mixture of disbelief and dawning recognition. "You're removing me from the quantum encryption project and characterizing it as a promotion." Bradley shifted uncomfortably, perhaps recognizing the moral bankruptcy of the situation, but unwilling to acknowledge it directly. "This is a business decision based on organizational needs, nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" Amelia's voice rose slightly, professional composure cracking under the weight of institutional betrayal. "This technology exists because of my research, my innovations, my leadership. Removing me is tantamount to theft." Patricia Hawkins responded with legal precision, designed to shut down further discussion. "All work performed at Technova becomes company property according to your employment agreement. The organization owns any innovations developed using corporate resources." The statement revealed the fundamental assumption underlying their entire approach, that Amelia's contributions were fungible, that her expertise could be separated from her innovations, that the company could benefit from her brilliance while discarding her person. "Corporate resources built upon foundations I developed independently," Amelia replied, her voice gaining strength as she recognized the battle being fought. "The quantum algorithms that make this system possible weren't created in Technova laboratories. Bradley's face hardened at what he perceived as threats to corporate ownership. Employment contracts are clear about intellectual property rights. Any work related to your position belongs to the company, regardless of when initial research occurred. The room fell silent as the true nature of the confrontation became clear. This wasn't about management efficiency or organizational optimization. It was about power, control, and the systematic appropriation of individual achievement for institutional benefit. Amelia stood slowly, gathering her materials with deliberate precision. You're making a mistake that will cost Teknova far more than you realize. The quantum encryption system requires ongoing development that only comes from deep understanding of its theoretical foundations. That's a risk we're prepared to accept, Bradley replied, his confidence masking underlying uncertainty about the technical implications of her departure. Existing documentation will provide sufficient guidance for future development. Quote, the corporate attorney slid the severance agreement across the table, its thick pages representing Teknova's attempt to purchase Amelia's silence and compliance. The offer includes non-disclosure provisions and non-compete clauses that protect both parties' interests. Amelia looked at the document without touching it, recognizing it as both an insulting gesture and a legal trap designed to prevent her from pursuing alternative courses of action. I need time to review this with my own attorney. Of course, Patricia Hawkins agreed, though her tone suggested this was a formality rather than a genuine consideration. We'll need your response by Monday morning. Corporate security will escort you from the building today. The finality of the statement hit Amelia like a physical blow. 3 years of dedicated work, professional relationships, and personal investment in Teknova's success were being terminated with bureaucratic efficiency that stripped away any pretense of human consideration. As she gathered her personal belongings under the watchful eyes of security personnel, Amelia felt the full weight of institutional injustice bearing down on her. Colleagues who had benefited from her expertise now avoided eye contact, unwilling to associate themselves with someone who had been marked for removal. The walk through Teknova's corridors felt surreal, each step taking her further from the laboratory, where she had achieved the most significant breakthrough of her career. The quantum encryption system that would soon generate hundreds of millions in revenue would continue without her, credited to leadership that had contributed little beyond administrative oversight. Outside the building, standing in the California sunshine that had once seemed so promising, Amelia confronted the harsh reality of corporate power structures that elevated authority over expertise, politics over performance. But as the initial shock began to fade, it was replaced by something far more dangerous to those who had wronged her. A quiet determination born from the knowledge that they had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They had assumed her contributions could be separated from her person, that her innovations belonged to them simply because they had signed her paychecks. What they didn't realize was that the foundation of their quantum encryption system rested on intellectual property that remained legally hers, protected by patents filed years before she had ever walked through Teknova's doors. The reckoning was coming, and it would be absolute. The silence in Amelia's apartment was deafening. For the first time in 3 years, she woke up without the familiar urgency of laboratory deadlines and breakthrough discoveries waiting to be made. Her coffee grew cold as she stared at the termination paperwork spread across her kitchen table, each page a reminder of how quickly a life's work could be dismantled by corporate machinery. The non-disclosure agreement sat prominently among the documents, its legal language designed to silence her permanently about Teknova's quantum encryption project. The non-compete clause would prevent her from working in her field of expertise for 18 months, effectively blacklisting her from the industry she had helped revolutionize. The severance package, while generous, felt like blood money, compensation for her complicity in her own professional destruction. Days blended into nights as Amelia struggled with a depression deeper than anything she had experienced. The structured routine of scientific research had provided meaning and purpose to her existence. Without it, she felt adrift in a world that suddenly seemed hostile to her very presence. Phone calls from concerned friends went unanswered. Invitations to professional conferences declined. The woman who had once commanded respect in boardrooms now found herself questioning every decision that had led to this moment. Her savings account provided temporary financial security, but the psychological toll proved far more devastating. Self-doubt crept in during the quiet hours, whispering insidious questions about her capabilities and worth. Had Bradley been right about her management deficiencies? Were her innovations truly as groundbreaking as she believed, or had her ego distorted her perception of their value? The uncertainty gnawed at her confidence like acid dissolving metal. 2 weeks into her exile, Dr. Sarah Chen called with news that shattered what remained of Amelia's composure. Teknova had announced a major breakthrough in quantum encryption technology, with Bradley Hoffman prominently featured in press releases as the visionary leader behind the innovation. Trade publications praised his strategic thinking and technical insight, crediting him with developing revolutionary algorithms that would transform cybersecurity forever. "It's your work, Amelia," Sarah said over the phone, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Every equation, every breakthrough, every line of code, they've repackaged it all under Bradley's name. The industry thinks he's some kind of genius." The betrayal cut deeper than the termination itself. Watching her intellectual children adopted by the very person who had dismissed their value felt like a violation of everything she held sacred about scientific integrity. Bradley's face smiled from magazine covers, accepting accolades for innovations he couldn't even comprehend, let alone replicate. Professional contacts began treating her differently, their interactions tainted by confusion about her departure from such a successful project. Former colleagues avoided her calls, whether from embarrassment, fear of corporate retaliation, or genuine belief that she had somehow failed to deserve credit for her own discoveries. The scientific community that had once celebrated her achievements now seemed to view her as a cautionary tale about the perils of academic arrogance in corporate environments. The isolation became suffocating. Amelia found herself spending entire days in pajamas, unable to summon the energy for basic self-care. The brilliant mind that had solved complex quantum puzzles now struggled with simple decisions about what to eat or whether to shower. Depression wrapped around her like a heavy blanket, muffling her ability to think clearly about the future. But in the depths of her despair, something began to stir. Late one night, while organizing her personal files, Amelia discovered a folder she had forgotten, patent applications filed during her graduate studies at Stanford. Her hands trembled as she read through the documents, each page confirming what she had known but temporarily forgotten in her emotional turmoil. The core algorithms that made Teknova's quantum encryption possible weren't corporate property. They belonged to her, legally and unequivocally, protected by patents she had filed years before joining the company. The mathematical foundations that Bradley was claiming as his revolutionary breakthrough were her intellectual property, documented and registered with the United States Patent Office. Patent US 10,847,293, Quantum State Manipulation for Cryptographic Applications. Filed 3 years before she joined Teknova. Patent US 10,952,847, Algorithmic Framework for Quantum Key Distribution. Filed during her final semester at Stanford. Patent US 11,183,621, Secure Communication Protocols Using Quantum Entanglement. Filed 6 months before her first day at Teknova. Each document represented not just legal protection, but vindication of her scientific contributions. The innovations that Bradley was claiming as his own were built upon foundations that remained legally hers, regardless of her employment status or the corporate machinery that had crushed her spirit. The realization sparked something that had been dormant during her weeks of despair, a cold, calculating anger that burned away the fog of depression. Teknova had stolen her work, destroyed her reputation, and attempted to erase her contributions from scientific history. But they had made a crucial error in their corporate arrogance. They had assumed ownership of intellectual property that was never theirs to claim. Amelia pulled out her laptop for the first time in weeks, her fingers moving with familiar precision across the keyboard. Patent databases, legal precedents, licensing agreements. She researched with the same methodical intensity that had characterized her scientific work. The law was clear. Any commercial application of her patented algorithms required her explicit permission and compensation. Teknova's quantum encryption system, the breakthrough that was generating massive investor interest in government contracts, was built upon technologies they had no legal right to use. Every demonstration, every sale, every licensing agreement represented patent infringement on a scale that would devastate the company financially and destroy Bradley's manufactured reputation. As dawn broke over San Francisco Bay, Amelia sat surrounded by legal documents and patent filings, her mind sharp and focused for the first time since her termination. The woman who had been broken by corporate injustice was gone, replaced by someone far more dangerous, a brilliant scientist with airtight legal claims and nothing left to lose. She reached for her phone and dialed the number for Morrison & Associates, the premier intellectual property law firm in Silicon Valley. When the receptionist answered, Amelia's voice was steady and clear. "I need to speak with someone about patent infringement. It's a matter involving hundreds of millions of dollars in damages." The game had changed, and Amelia Washington was no longer playing defense. The law offices of Morrison & Associates occupied an entire floor of a gleaming downtown San Francisco tower, their reputation for intellectual property warfare legendary throughout Silicon Valley. Amelia sat across from Margaret Morrison herself, the founding partner whose victories had toppled tech giants and reshaped entire industries. The patent documents lay spread between them like battle plans, each page representing ammunition in what promised to be a corporate siege. "This is extraordinary," Margaret said, adjusting her reading glasses as she examined the patent filings. "The technical complexity alone would make these patents nearly impossible to circumvent, but the timing is what makes this case devastating. You filed these core algorithms years before Teknova even knew quantum encryption was viable." Margaret's associate, David Kim, pulled up Teknova's recent press releases on his laptop. They're advertising quantum encryption as their proprietary breakthrough technology. Every marketing statement, every investor presentation, every government proposal directly infringes on Dr. Washington's patents. The legal strategy began taking shape over the following weeks. Unlike typical patent disputes that dragged through courts for years, this case offered unique advantages. Teknova had unknowingly built their entire quantum security division on stolen intellectual property, making them vulnerable to immediate injunctive relief that could shut down their operations overnight. Margaret assembled a team of specialists, patent attorneys, quantum computing experts, and forensic accountants who would calculate damages from Teknova's commercial exploitation of Amelia's innovations. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just the patent violations, but the systematic appropriation of credit that had elevated Bradley's reputation while erasing Amelia's contributions. Meanwhile, Teknova's success story continued dominating industry headlines. Government contracts worth hundreds of millions were being negotiated, with the Department of Defense expressing interest in exclusive licensing agreements. Bradley appeared on business television shows, his newfound celebrity status built entirely on Amelia's stolen work. The irony wasn't lost on Amelia as she watched Bradley stumble through technical questions during a live broadcast. When pressed about the mathematical foundations of quantum encryption, he deflected to, quote, proprietary algorithms and trade secrets, clearly unable to explain concepts he claimed to have invented. The performance would have been comical if not for the billions of dollars in valuation it was generating for Teknova. Dr. Sarah Chen reached out secretly, requesting a clandestine meeting at a coffee shop in Berkeley. Her information proved invaluable. Teknova's engineering team was struggling without Amelia's guidance, encountering problems they couldn't solve because they lacked understanding of the underlying quantum principles. "They're trying to enhance the encryption protocols," Sarah whispered, glancing nervously around the cafe, "but every modification breaks something else. Bradley keeps demanding faster implementation timelines while the team keeps hitting dead ends. It's chaos." The technical difficulties at Teknova created opportunities for Amelia's legal strategy. Margaret Morrison filed preliminary motions for discovery, demanding access to Teknova's quantum encryption source code. The company would be forced to reveal how extensively they had relied on Amelia's patented algorithms, providing evidence of infringement while exposing their inability to innovate beyond her original work. 3 months after her termination, Amelia received an unexpected phone call from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the Chief Technology Officer at CyberShield Defense, a rapidly growing cybersecurity firm. Elena had been following the quantum encryption developments with professional interest and growing suspicion about their true origins. "I've read your published papers from Stanford," Elena said during their meeting. "The mathematical signatures in Teknova's quantum algorithms are identical to your theoretical framework. This isn't coincidence. It's intellectual theft on a massive scale." CyberShield offered Amelia a position as their Director of Advanced Research, with explicit support for her legal battle against Teknova. The company understood that hiring her would send a powerful message to the industry about supporting innovation over corporate appropriation. The new role provided Amelia with resources and credibility that strengthened her legal position. Working with CyberShield's legal team, she began developing alternative quantum encryption approaches that would compete directly with Teknova's stolen technology. Every breakthrough at CyberShield demonstrated her continued innovation, while highlighting Teknova's dependence on her original work. Industry publications began questioning Teknova's quantum encryption claims. Technical journals published analyses comparing their algorithms to Amelia's earlier academic papers, noting similarities that seemed unlikely to be coincidental. Patent attorneys across Silicon Valley started advising clients about potential infringement issues related to quantum computing applications. The pressure mounted when the Electronic Frontier Foundation publicly raised concerns about Teknova's intellectual property claims. Their investigation revealed that the company's quantum encryption patents were filed months after Amelia's original applications, suggesting a pattern of derivative innovation rather than genuine breakthrough research. Margaret Morrison accelerated the legal timeline, filing for emergency injunctive relief that would halt Teknova's quantum encryption operations pending resolution of the patent dispute. The motion included devastating evidence, side-by-side comparisons of Amelia's original algorithms and Teknova's proprietary code, expert testimony from quantum computing specialists, and financial projections showing hundreds of millions in projected damages. Teknova's stock price began fluctuating as investors grew nervous about the patent challenges. Bradley was forced to address the allegations during earnings calls, his explanations growing increasingly desperate as technical experts publicly dismantled his claims to innovation. The quantum encryption project that had seemed like Teknova's path to dominance was becoming a liability that threatened the company's survival. Government contracts were placed under review pending resolution of the intellectual property disputes. Corporate customers began demanding indemnification against patent lawsuits before proceeding with licensing agreements. Amelia watched the developments with grim satisfaction. The woman who had been discarded as expendable was systematically dismantling the empire built on her stolen work. Every legal victory, every technical revelation, every media report chipped away at the narrative that had elevated Bradley while erasing her contributions. The transformation was complete. From victim to victor, from powerless employee to intellectual property warrior. The quantum encryption technology that was supposed to be Teknova's greatest triumph had become the instrument of their potential destruction. As she prepared for the upcoming court hearings that would determine the fate of both companies, Amelia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The injustice that had nearly broken her spirit had instead forged her into something far more dangerous to those who had wronged her. A brilliant scientist armed with unassailable legal weapons and an unshakable determination to claim what was rightfully hers. The reckoning was no longer approaching, it had arrived. The federal courthouse in San Jose hummed with anticipation as lawyers, journalists, and industry observers filled the gallery for what had become the most closely watched intellectual property case in Silicon Valley history. Outside, news vans lined the street while financial analysts prepared live updates that would instantly impact Teknova's plummeting stock price. The quantum encryption patent dispute had evolved into a symbol of corporate justice that transcended the technology industry. Judge Patricia Kelly presided over proceedings that would determine not just financial damages, but the very definition of innovation ownership in the digital age. Her reputation for methodical analysis and intolerance for corporate deception made her the ideal arbiter for a case built on systematic intellectual theft. Amelia entered the courtroom flanked by Margaret Morrison's legal team, her presence commanding attention from spectators who recognized her as the brilliant scientist at the center of this corporate drama. She wore a navy blue suit that projected professional authority, her confidence bearing a stark contrast to the broken woman who had been escorted from Teknova's building 6 months earlier. Bradley sat at the defendant's table, surrounded by Teknova's army of corporate attorneys. His earlier confidence had been replaced by visible anxiety as the magnitude of his legal exposure became clear. The patents that Amelia held weren't just related to quantum encryption, they were its foundational elements, making every aspect of Teknova's breakthrough technology legally problematic. Margaret Morrison approached the podium with devastating evidence organized in precise legal arguments. Your Honor, this case represents one of the most brazen examples of intellectual property theft in modern corporate history. Dr. Washington's patents, filed years before her employment at Teknova, cover every fundamental algorithm that makes their quantum encryption possible. The prosecution's opening statement methodically dismantled Teknova's claims to innovation. Technical experts testified about the mathematical impossibility of independently developing identical quantum algorithms, while patent attorneys explained how Teknova's applications were clearly derivative of Amelia's original work. Dr. Marcus Rivera, testifying under subpoena, reluctantly confirmed that Teknova's quantum encryption system relied entirely on algorithms that Amelia had developed independently. His testimony was particularly damaging because it came from someone who had witnessed the project's development from its inception. Dr. Washington provided the theoretical framework, the mathematical proofs, and the implementation strategies, he admitted under oath. Without her contributions, there would be no quantum encryption system at Teknova. Bradley's defense team attempted to argue that employment contracts transferred all intellectual property rights to the corporation, but Margaret Morrison systematically destroyed this position by demonstrating that Amelia's core patents predated her employment by years. The legal principle was clear. Companies cannot claim ownership of innovations that existed before the employment relationship began. The most devastating moment came when the court required Bradley to explain the technical foundations of the quantum encryption system he claimed to have invented. Under direct examination, his ignorance became painfully obvious to everyone present. "Can you explain the mathematical basis for quantum key distribution?" Margaret Morrison asked during cross-examination. Bradley's answer revealed his complete lack of understanding. The quantum algorithms utilize proprietary methodologies that create secure communication channels through advanced computational processes. The vague, meaningless response drew visible reactions from the technical experts in the gallery. Dr. Sarah Chen, testifying as a witness for Amelia, provided a stark contrast by explaining the quantum mechanical principles with precision and depth that made Bradley's ignorance impossible to ignore. Quantum encryption relies on the fundamental principle that measuring a quantum state changes it, she explained. Dr. Washington's algorithms exploit this property to create communication systems where any attempt at eavesdropping is automatically detected. The technical testimony established not only Amelia's expertise, but also the impossibility of Bradley having independently developed such sophisticated innovations. The court learned that quantum encryption required deep understanding of physics, mathematics, and computer science, knowledge that Bradley demonstrably lacked. Teknova's financial experts testified reluctantly about the commercial value of the quantum encryption technology. Government contracts worth $400 million were pending, while private sector licensing agreements projected revenues exceeding $2 billion over 5 years. Every dollar represented profits generated from Amelia's stolen intellectual property. The defense's strategy collapsed when internal Teknova emails were introduced as evidence. Communications between Bradley and other executives revealed their awareness that Amelia was the true architect of their quantum breakthrough, along with discussions about how to minimize her credit and maximize their own recognition. One particularly damaging email from Bradley to the company's PR department read, "Emphasize management vision and strategic direction. Downplay individual technical contributions. The market responds to leadership narratives, not scientific details." Judge Kelly's questions during the proceedings indicated her growing understanding of the case's implications. This wasn't merely about patent infringement, it was about systematic corporate appropriation of individual genius for institutional benefit. "Mr. Hoffman," the judge addressed Bradley directly, "you've claimed credit for innovations that you admittedly cannot explain. How do you reconcile this with your fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders and investors?" Bradley's response was a stammering attempt to deflect responsibility to his legal team, further undermining his credibility and exposing the hollow nature of his claimed expertise. The courtroom drama reached its climax when Amelia herself took the stand. Her testimony was a masterclass in technical precision combined with personal authenticity. She explained her quantum algorithms with effortless clarity while describing the emotional devastation of watching her life's work attributed to someone else. Innovation requires not just inspiration but years of dedicated research, countless failed experiments, and the persistence to solve problems that others consider impossible, she testified. "Mr. Hoffman appropriated the results of my work while contributing nothing to its development." The cross-examination by Teknova's attorneys attempted to portray Amelia as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, but her responses were measured and factual. She presented documentation, research notebooks, and academic publications that proved her quantum encryption work began during graduate school, years before she had ever heard of Teknova. As proceedings concluded, the power dynamics in the courtroom had completely reversed. Bradley, once the confident corporate executive, now faced potential personal liability for fraud and corporate misconduct. Amelia, previously the dismissed employee, had demonstrated not only her technical brilliance but also her legal position's unassailable strength. The judge's preliminary comments suggested that Teknova faced not just monetary damages but also immediate injunctive relief that would halt all quantum encryption operations. The technology that was supposed to secure the company's future had become the instrument of its potential destruction. Outside the courthouse, media coverage focused on the David versus Goliath narrative that had captured public imagination. The brilliant black scientist who had been discarded by corporate arrogance was systematically dismantling the empire built on her stolen work. As Amelia walked down the courthouse steps, flanked by her legal team and surrounded by supportive colleagues from across the technology industry, she embodied the transformation from victim to victor. The woman who had been broken by institutional injustice had become the architect of its correction. The final judgment would determine specific damages and remedies, but the verdict was already clear. Truth had prevailed over power, innovation over appropriation, and justice over corporate corruption. The judgment came on a crisp autumn morning that would forever divide Teknova's corporate history into before and after. Judge Patricia Kelly's voice carried through the packed federal courtroom with the weight of legal precedent that would reshape how Silicon Valley approached intellectual property rights. The 43-page ruling represented more than just a legal victory. It was a comprehensive dismantling of corporate theft disguised as innovation. The evidence presented to this court reveals a pattern of systematic intellectual property appropriation that goes beyond simple patent infringement, Judge Kelly declared, her words being live-streamed to millions of viewers worldwide. Teknova Industries, under the leadership of Mr. Bradley Hoffman, knowingly built their quantum encryption division on Dr. Amelia Washington's patented innovations, while deliberately erasing her contributions from corporate narratives. The damages awarded were staggering in their scope and precision. Dr. Washington was granted $847 million in compensatory damages, calculated from Teknova's projected revenues from quantum encryption over the next decade. An additional $200 million in punitive damages reflected the court's determination to send a message about the consequences of intellectual property theft. The total exceeded $1 billion, the largest patent infringement judgment in technology industry history. But the financial penalties, devastating as they were, represented only the beginning of Teknova's reckoning. Judge Kelly's injunctive relief immediately halted all quantum encryption operations pending a complete restructuring of the company's intellectual property practices. Government contracts worth hundreds of millions were suspended indefinitely, while corporate clients began seeking alternative cybersecurity solutions to avoid association with the scandal. Bradley Hoffman's personal consequences proved even more severe than the corporate penalties. The court found him personally liable for fraudulent misrepresentation, having knowingly claimed credit for innovations he neither developed nor understood. His assets faced immediate seizure to satisfy personal damages, while federal prosecutors announced they were reviewing the case for potential criminal charges related to investor fraud and securities violations. The transformation in Bradley's circumstances was as dramatic as it was swift. The confident executive who had commanded boardrooms and graced magazine covers now faced personal bankruptcy and potential imprisonment. His luxury home in Palo Alto was listed for immediate sale, while his stock options and corporate benefits evaporated along with Teknova's market capitalization. Margaret Morrison addressed the media outside the courthouse, her statement carrying implications that extended far beyond this single case. Today's judgment establishes crucial precedents for protecting individual innovation against corporate appropriation. Dr. Washington's victory sends a clear message that brilliant minds cannot be discarded after their ideas are stolen. The technology industry's response was immediate and polarizing. Progressive leaders celebrated the decision as overdue justice for systematic inequities that had marginalized brilliant women and minorities, while elevating mediocre men through stolen achievements. Conservative voices worried about the precedent's impact on corporate ability to commercialize employee innovations, though their concerns carried little weight given the overwhelming evidence of Teknova's misconduct. Stock markets reacted with characteristic volatility. Teknova's share price collapsed by 87% in 3 trading days, wiping out billions in market capitalization and forcing emergency meetings among institutional investors. But the broader technology sector actually rallied, as markets interpreted the judgment as protecting legitimate innovation against parasitic appropriation. The reverberations extended into academic circles, where Dr. Washington's vindication sparked conversations about intellectual property protection for university researchers. Patent attorneys reported a surge in inquiries from graduate students and postdoctoral researchers seeking to protect their innovations before entering corporate environments. 3 weeks after the judgment, Teknova's board of directors announced Bradley Hoffman's immediate termination as division head, along with the resignation of 3 other executives who had participated in the systematic appropriation of Dr. Washington's work. The company's new leadership publicly acknowledged their predecessor's misconduct while announcing comprehensive reforms designed to prevent future intellectual property violations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, CEO of CyberShield Defense, sees the opportunity presented by Teknova's collapse. "We're witnessing the consequence of building corporate success on stolen foundations," she announced during a press conference that attracted international attention. CyberShield's partnership with Dr. Washington represents authentic innovation, not appropriated brilliance. Under Dr. Washington's leadership, CyberShield's quantum encryption development accelerated dramatically. Free from corporate constraints and legal uncertainties, her team pushed the boundaries of quantum security far beyond what Teknova had achieved with her stolen algorithms. New patent applications filed weekly demonstrated her continued innovation while establishing CyberShield as a legitimate leader in quantum cybersecurity. The irony of Teknova's situation became increasingly apparent as their technical team struggled without access to Dr. Washington's ongoing innovations. The quantum encryption system they had stolen was now obsolete, surpassed by newer developments that remained legally protected. Their stolen technology had become a worthless relic, while the woman they had discarded continued advancing the field they could no longer enter. Government agencies, initially interested in Teknova's quantum encryption capabilities, redirected their attention to CyberShield's authentic innovations. The Department of Defense announced a 5-year research partnership with Dr. Washington's team, while the National Security Agency expressed interest in exclusive licensing agreements for classified applications. Corporate customers who had fled Teknova's sinking ship found superior alternatives in CyberShield's quantum security solutions. Financial institutions, healthcare systems, and telecommunications companies signed contracts worth hundreds of millions, generating revenue streams that dwarfed what Teknova had projected from their stolen technology. Dr. Washington's personal transformation paralleled her professional vindication. The broken woman who had questioned her worth and capabilities was replaced by someone who understood her true value in both technical and commercial contexts. She moved into a spacious research facility in Berkeley, where she led teams of brilliant scientists who recognized her expertise rather than seeking to diminish it. Psychological healing proved as important as the financial compensation. Months of therapy helped her process the trauma of institutional betrayal while developing strategies for preventing future exploitation. She emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined to ensure that other brilliant minds wouldn't suffer the systematic marginalization she had endured. Speaking engagements at universities and professional conferences allowed Dr. Washington to share her story while advocating for stronger intellectual property protections. Her presentations combined technical brilliance with personal authenticity, inspiring young researchers while warning them about corporate predators who sought to profit from their innovations. The establishment of the Washington Institute for Innovation Protection represented her commitment to systemic change. The nonprofit organization provided legal resources for researchers facing intellectual property theft, while advocating for policy reforms that would prevent corporate appropriation of individual genius. Bradley Hoffman's fall continued accelerating as federal prosecutors filed criminal charges related to securities fraud and investor deception. The indictment alleged that he had knowingly misrepresented his role in quantum encryption development while soliciting hundreds of millions in investment based on false claims of innovation. His trial became a media spectacle that exposed the depths of his deception. Testimony revealed years of systematic credit theft, deliberate marginalization of brilliant employees, and conscious construction of false narratives about his technical capabilities. The prosecution painted him as a corporate parasite who had built his career on appropriated achievements. The contrast between Bradley's courtroom appearance and his former executive confidence was stark. The man who had once dismissed Dr. Washington's expertise now faced cross-examination that exposed his fundamental ignorance about the technologies he had claimed to invent. His attempts to explain quantum encryption principles provided unintentional comedy while demonstrating the hollowness of his manufactured reputation. The jury's guilty verdict on all counts surprised no one who had followed the case. Bradley's sentencing to 8 years in federal prison served as a warning to other executives who might consider similar appropriation strategies. His fall from corporate titan to convicted felon represented one of the most dramatic reversals in Silicon Valley history. Teknova's bankruptcy filing came 6 months after the initial judgment, as the company proved unable to survive the combination of massive damages, lost contracts, and irreparable reputation damage. The liquidation process revealed the extent to which their success had depended on Dr. Washington's stolen innovations. Without access to her continued developments, they had no viable path forward. The company's assets were purchased by a consortium led by Cyber Shield Defense, creating delicious irony as Dr. Washington's new employer acquired the remains of the organization that had wronged her. The transaction provided her with access to research facilities and equipment that had once been used to exploit her genius. Industry analysis of Teknova's collapse became required reading in business schools, illustrating the catastrophic consequences of building corporate strategy on stolen intellectual property. The case study demonstrated how short-term thinking and ethical bankruptcy could destroy billions in market value, while elevating the very people who had been victimized. Dr. Washington's Nobel Prize nomination, announced 2 years after her legal victory, represented the ultimate vindication of her scientific contributions. The nomination cited her revolutionary contributions to quantum cryptography and her courage in defending intellectual property rights against corporate appropriation. The ceremony in Stockholm provided a platform for her to address global audiences about the importance of protecting individual innovation against institutional exploitation. Her acceptance speech, watched by millions worldwide, combined technical elegance with passionate advocacy for systemic reform. Innovation belongs to the minds that create it, not the corporations that seek to exploit it, she declared to thunderous applause. We must build systems that nurture genius rather than appropriating it, that celebrate authentic achievement rather than manufactured reputation. The quantum encryption technology that had once threatened to be stolen from her had become the foundation for a new kind of corporate success, one built on authentic innovation, ethical leadership, and respect for intellectual property. CyberShield's market capitalization exceeded what Teknova had achieved at its peak, demonstrating that legitimate success could surpass achievements built on stolen foundations. As Dr. Washington stood in her state-of-the-art laboratory, surrounded by brilliant colleagues who respected her contributions rather than seeking to diminish them, she reflected on the journey that had transformed her from victim to victor. The quantum encryption algorithms that had nearly been stolen from her were now generating billions in legitimate revenue while protecting the world's most sensitive information. The patent revolution she had inadvertently started continued rippling through the technology industry as researchers and inventors gained new confidence in protecting their intellectual property against corporate appropriation. Legal precedents established by her case provided weapons for other brilliant minds facing similar exploitation. The woman who had once been dismissed as expendable had become a symbol of justice in the digital age. Her story proved that truth could prevail over power, that innovation could triumph over appropriation, and that brilliant minds deserve protection against those who would steal their genius. The quantum encryption technology that had promised to protect the world's secrets had fulfilled its purpose in ways none of them had anticipated, by protecting the brilliant woman who created it from those who sought to erase her contributions while profiting from her genius. In the end, the greatest security Dr. Washington had achieved wasn't technological but personal, the unshakable knowledge that her innovations belonged to her, that her contributions had value, and that justice, however delayed, would ultimately prevail over corporate corruption and systematic inequality. The patent revolution was complete, and the world was better for it. 5 years later, Dr. Washington stood before the United Nations Technology Council, addressing representatives from 193 countries about the global framework for intellectual property protection she had helped architect. The Washington Protocol, as it had become known, established international standards for protecting individual innovation against corporate appropriation, with enforcement mechanisms that transcended national boundaries. We've learned that innovation without protection is merely exploitation waiting to happen, she told the assembled delegates. The quantum encryption case demonstrated how quickly brilliant minds can be discarded once their ideas are stolen. We cannot allow this pattern to repeat across borders and industries. The protocol had already prevented dozens of similar cases worldwide. Research institutions in developing nations received technical assistance to help their scientists protect innovations before engaging with multinational corporations. Young inventors in Silicon Valley, Tokyo, and Tel Aviv filed patents with confidence, knowing that international law would support their rights against institutional theft. CyberShield Defense had evolved into a global technology conglomerate, but one built on radically different principles from traditional corporations. Dr. Washington's equity-sharing model ensured that researchers owned significant stakes in the innovations they created, while transparent development processes prevented the kind of systematic appropriation that had destroyed Technova. The company's quantum research division, housed in a sprawling campus in Berkeley, attracted the world's brightest minds not just through competitive salaries, but through guarantees of intellectual property protection and authentic recognition. The quarterly innovation attribution ceremonies had become legendary in the technology community, celebrating individual contributors rather than executives who claimed unearned credit. Bradley Hoffman was scheduled for release from federal prison in 18 months, his sentence reduced for cooperation with ongoing investigations into corporate intellectual property fraud. But the technology industry had moved far beyond his outdated model of success through appropriation. Companies that failed to adapt to the new ethical standards found themselves unable to attract top talent or secure investor confidence. The ripple effects extended into academia, where universities restructured their technology transfer policies to better protect faculty innovations. Graduate students no longer graduated with brilliant ideas and empty patent portfolios. Institutional support for intellectual property protection had become a standard measure of university quality. Dr. Washington's personal fortune, now exceeding $2 billion through legitimate quantum technology revenues, funded educational initiatives that identified and protected young innovators from underrepresented communities. The Washington Scholars Program provided not just research funding but also legal resources, ensuring that the next generation of brilliant minds would never face the systematic exploitation she had endured. Her memoir, Quantum Justice: How Truth Defeated Corporate Theft, had become required reading in business schools and law programs worldwide. The book's unflinching examination of corporate culture and systemic inequality sparked conversations that continued reshaping institutional practices across industries. Standing in her laboratory late one evening, watching her team of international researchers collaborate on the next generation of quantum security protocols, Dr. Washington reflected on the unexpected journey that had transformed personal injustice into global change. The quantum encryption algorithms that had nearly been stolen from her were now protecting democratic institutions, human rights organizations, and innovative startups from those who would exploit their vulnerabilities. The patent revolution she had sparked had become something larger than she had ever imagined. A fundamental shift in how society balanced individual genius against institutional power. And in the quantum realm she had helped create, where observation changes reality, her vigilant protection of innovation continued reshaping the world one breakthrough at a time. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.